Unfiltered opinions.
Sometimes you have ideas and you're not quite sure why.
As you secure the bag.
Sometimes you meet people and realize there's probably a reason why you stayed in touch.
Just listen.
Sometimes all the pieces just come together by themselves.
I'm Jimmy Moyaha.
And I'm Simon Brown.
Welcome to Insider Exchange.
Good morning. Welcome to yet another episode of Insider Exchange. Welcome to Market Matters. Of course, live streamed for your viewing pleasure every Monday morning, with the rest of the show set to drop later in the week. We are into August. We are officially into the second half of the year, having gone through the bulk and the entirety of July, and we're on that gentle slide down towards December. Because that's what the rest of the year is, right? We start thinking about it now because it's been a very, very long year. This week on the show, we are going to take a look at some market matters. We're going to be looking at the outcomes of the tariff or reciprocal tariffs from the US's perspective. We're going to be looking at last week's inflationary conversation from the South African Reserve Bank and the awkwardness that has created. And we're going to look at Trump's latest temper tantrum in firing some people. That's what's coming up on Market Matters. As for the rest of the show, in the deep dive, we are going to do something quite interesting. We're going to do our little bit as civil servants, that being civil servants to you, our insider community, and see if we can find creative ways to fund Formula One. And then, of course, we're going to wrap up the show with Investor Insights. We're going to be taking a look at some very interesting leases that the South African government or certain South African departments have had in place for many, many years, and whether or not they still make sense. And then, of course, there's an unfiltered opinion of the week at the end of the show, so stick around for that. Before we get into Market Matters, the names continue. We have a new set of names. They are still Irish-themed. And while we are on the Irish-themed names, a quick shout-out to one of the online content creators who has a simple Irish name, and we appreciate that about him. Garen, you know who you are. Very, very popular Irish content creator. Does fantastic work. His tagline at the end of his videos is, "Follow me, I'm delicious."
Yes, I know.
Absolutely love Garen. But shout out to Garen for having the simplest Irish name, because the ones that we found this week simply don't make sense. Sai, you are?
Eoghan.
Eoghan. EOGHAN is the spelling for those that are listening to the audio podcast. And the pronunciation is?
Eoghan.
Owen.
Oh. Hey, I could almost believe that. I mean...
I, on the other hand, am AOIFE.
Aof.
No. I am Aoife.
Aoife.
There we go, right? So, weird Irish names, weird spellings. Okay. We finally found it. We've cracked the code. Once again, the gentleman at Starbucks that was making the coffees this morning couldn't be bothered to ask about the spelling of the pronounced names. Just said, just tell me what to write on the cup. So that's how we do it, right? That's how we crack the code. Get Irish names, and now nobody knows how to spell them. But let's get straight into Market Matters, because we have so much to cover. And perhaps let's start with the awkwardness that came about from the Reserve Bank's perspective, because the Trump news and the US news are much bigger news, and that's going to continue to unfold. We'll get to tariffs.
I love this.
So last week we came onto the show. Sai and I were debating whether or not we're going to get an interest rate cut and what it meant for inflation. We got a cut at 25 basis point, but we also got a Reserve Bank governor who said, I want to now push to anchor inflation at 3%. And we were like, okay, cool, that's lovely. So this happens on Thursday afternoon, around 3 p.m., maybe 3:30-ish. The next morning, Friday, there is a press release from National Treasury. And the Minister of National Treasury, Minister Enoch Godongwana, says, we are not revising the inflation targeting policy. Effectively saying, I don't appreciate that this minister, the Reserve Bank governor has spoken on policy when policy has not been decided. That is not the position of National Treasury. And this was a bit weird, right? Because now you're saying we don't necessarily support inflation targeting moving lower, despite the fact that your deputy minister a couple of months ago said exactly the opposite.
So, two things. He got usurped, but the important point is the word anchoring. The governor did not change our inflation target.
He did not.
Our inflation target is 3% to 6%. He reminded us in that press conference that in July of 2017, they said we are going to anchor at 4.5. Massively been efficient.
Which wasn't a policy decision again.
No, it's not, because the policy decision is 3 to 6. The governor, and I imagine his cohorts of MPC members, have decided to anchor at 3%. That is within their mandate. For the minister to say it hasn't been a consideration is nonsense. We know it has been. We know there are talks to change. There was expectation it might happen at the midterm budget policy statement in October. He said nix. So then it's happening at budget, right, in February. I mean, okay, so now we know when the announcement will be made. And then they will come out and say it's 3%. And SARB and the MPC will be like, ching, ching, already there. Look, when he said it in the press conference, fortunately I was sitting down because I was like, yo. But then you look at the language and you look at the mandate and you look at the rules, and he's entirely entitled to do it. It just feels almost a little bit anticlimactic that we now suddenly, we now sit in a 3% inflation target world. Roll that forward, 5 years, because it might be a little bit bumpy now. And truthfully, it might be very bumpy and it might be painful. Let's say, Rand goes to 20, oil goes to 90, petrol goes to 35, our inflation goes to 5. it could get ugly. It could. But we're now in a 3% inflation world. And when we've sort of settled that down, it means, we're now, okay, so our developed market trading partners are at 2%. It's like we're in touching distance. I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge, and I think the governor and his team had every right to do it. I get why Treasury is upset, but maybe they should just have moved a little faster.
So a couple of theories around this, right? There have been a couple of smart people out there saying this is a policy mistake, this shouldn't be done, it's unrealistic to anchor it at these levels and all those sorts of things. And I can't help but wonder. So one of the main arguments that's been made is it doesn't reflect the reality of the South African story. So what South Africans are having as lived experiences doesn't reflect the 3%, right? Now, that is true to an extent. I think part of that also you need to take into account that for a South African middle class that has been strained and been under pressure, having a 3% inflation anchoring policy kind of is a good thing in the long term. Again, you've mentioned it, Sion. It's not just today. You've mentioned it before. There has to be short-term pain with this kind of adjustment because at the moment we've lived under the world of 4.5%. So there has to be short-term pain. In the long term, we do expect that it will be better. But I can't help but wonder if this conversation would even be a topical conversation if we were at 5% growth as a country. If we actually had real GDP growth, nobody in the economy would care that the South African Reserve Bank is reducing inflation because it just means, we get to do more in the economy. But when your economy is so constrained, and we've spoken about this before, that any little pressure points or any little movements here and there have a significant impact. You look at something like National Treasury. If we had a 4%, 4% GDP outlook or economic growth, they wouldn't be commenting because they'd be making more money. But they're not making enough money as it is, right? And that, again, is not the fault of the Reserve Bank. And so when you're a central bank and you are independent and you have a limited toolbox with which to work with, I think our disgruntlement and our discontent is slightly misplaced. We should be upset at the fact that National Treasury isn't stimulating the economy. You control the budget, you're not stimulating the economy, and therefore you're going to want to find fault with the Reserve Bank that's doing what they are tasked with doing.
Yeah, 100%. What are you actually trying to do here? Give us some growth. It wouldn't be a debate. To your point, if inflation was higher, we wouldn't be having it. And there is risk. Casey Sprague from Anchor, she's like, this could go horribly wrong. The point is, it's actually would be less horribly wrong. And to be clear, I'm not quoting Casey right now, because it's anchoring, not targeting. If we let's say inflation goes crazy and all those horrible stories and it's 5%. Well, the Reserve Bank, they would look a little silly, but they could unanchor or re-anchor at a new point. Whereas if the target is 3, then
we've got a problem.
One is like anchor, it's writing in pencil. The other is like target, it's like chiseling in stone. Maybe this is actually a nice way to sort of, let's try 6 months of this 3%. Now, truthfully, 6 months isn't very long, But let's try a bit of this 3% and let's see how it goes.
I agree. So I think it's very much
It means goods double in price every 25 years.
We're going to change the policy without directly changing the policy. I think it's a very tactical move on the part of the Reserve Bank to say, we're simply staying within our mandate, except we're going to the lower end of our range instead of the higher end or the midpoint, and we're allowed to be anywhere in that range because that's the prescribed range according to National Treasury. Shout out to Jimbo. He's joined us as well on our live stream chat. Jimbo's got a new job. Hey, congratulations, Jimbo.
Cool,
congratulations. Cool. Well done, well done. US matters. As we look at US matters. That tariff announcement officially, it's not really an announcement. It was an announcement in April. We had a deadline. The deadline was the 1st of August when tariffs would be implemented. And I want to get into that. Before I get into that, I want to look at the conversation that we had last week where you mentioned, Sai, that Trump was bullying. And we don't like bullies, right? And someone in our TikTok community, Cindy, had a comment about that. She said, and I quote, I love this. America is the bully that needs the Simon, aka the China muscle. I now support BRICS power to weaken his superpower. Russian mindset is far greater than his, but US technology is far greater. Hence, his power source against other nations. Simon, it's the time to pay Trump a visit and show him your muscles. Sending you love and appreciation, Cindy.
Yeah, I'm not... Cindy, love you. Not going to the US.
Why not? It could be a very... I'll bring the video cameras. We can record the whole interaction. Could be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Yeah. 2 Africans, 1 white, 1 not. This is going to go down like a...
Well, look, would be proving to Trump that there's no racism. So short of something happening to you and me being blamed for it,
which is... Yeah, I think I'm busy that weekend. But it is. So America's been the bully, but they've been the soft power bully. And under Trump, and to be clear, what we're approaching, we're past 6 months, but like there's a long way to go still. We are getting the what's what I'm looking for, the hard power, slam things around. We're certainly seeing it with tariffs.
Well, it's because someone gave him a pen and told him he can sign executive orders.
And some of them are, I mean, we've discussed the Brazil one where basically he's trying to interfere in their judiciary, which, I don't know, that seems quite bad. But then he did, he is bullying. But he's not just bullying trade partners, he's bullying everyone. I mean, to the point that he fired the head of the Bureau of Labor's stats on Friday because he didn't like the data, which, let's be clear, this has happened before, right? Turkey, Zimbabwe.
Yeah, but it's America, so they're allowed to...
Well, no, but here's the thing. So now they're going to put a new person in charge of the Bureau of Labor.
Who's going to read the same data.
But we're all going to look at it and say, how do we trust it? Now, to be clear, the head of the BLS is not the person who compiles it. In fact, they only see the data a few days before, and then it gets polished, and then the final number goes to the president the night before. You know that he spent all of Thursday night on the phone to this person trying to get them to change the numbers. I mean, isn't that... I don't know, China, like bad numbers you got there, be a shame if you died over them. I mean, something like that. I mean, like we are not even hop, skips and jumps. It starts to say that we don't, I can't believe I'm saying it. Can we trust American data? Because we know that if a number Trump doesn't like, he's going to try and get it changed. And if he can't, he will fire the person so that he can put someone more compliant in his space. So, for example, the Fed rate decision on Wednesday wasn't consensus for the first time in like 30 years because 2 of Trump's ponies decided, no, we must cut rates. And
so, side note, Jimbo says to us in our chat, he likens Trump to a baby who's discovered a pen for the first time. He's scribbling everywhere, which has actual consequences.
Yeah.
It does feel that way, though.
It does, except that the baby's just scribbling on your wall and you can paint it.
Yeah, but unfortunately that wall is a bunch of executive orders.
I know, in Trump's
And for
case,
now, you can't paint for 5 years.
not that many years.
Well, are you going to impeach the man? It doesn't look like it.
No, but also, they get 4-year terms. 4-year terms.
Oh, sorry, they get 4-year terms, but we're 6 months into a 4-year term with a president who has previously survived 2 impeachments.
Oh, and fun fact, so he made the Smithsonian take down so the Smithsonian has a thing on presidents who have been impeached, which is Carter, Clinton, and
Trump.
I think somebody else. Anyway, they made him take the Trump down. 1,265 days.
To go.
I know.
No.
Yes, I mean, that's just it.
No, we
That's
can't still
just-
have more than 1,000 days of this to deal with.
Gent, it's got to be like it's going to be April of next year until it's less than 1,000 days. And to be clear, it's currently only August.
Okay, so in that, right, let's perhaps look at the tariff conversation as well and what's happening now with the tariff announcements. There was an announcement, obviously, not an announcement, again, a confirmation of when the tariffs would take effect. Friday, the 1st of July was the date. Now we're hearing reports that from a South African perspective, we've negotiated a 7-day extension of sorts, and now our tariffs are technically only coming to effect on the 7th of August or something of the sort. That's this Thursday, right? So that means we have 3 days to anchor in a deal that we haven't been able to do over 2 months. And I want to get into that from a South African perspective. Other nations, and the reason I want to look at it from an SA perspective is if we're looking at it from an African continent perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I just want to give you some data. Mm-hmm. There were amounts or percentages announced in April when the tariff announcements were made. And then there was the confirmed
Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. And then there's a confirmed rate that took place now as of 1 August, right? Mm-hmm. Of the African countries, pretty much all of the African countries except 4 got reductions, right? Now, the countries like Angola, Botswana, Cameroon, Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, DRC, Equatorial Guinea, Ghana, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, and Uganda all got reductions from what was initially proposed as an amount. So Lesotho, as an example, biggest winner there. 50% down to 15%. Yeah. Only 4 countries were denied reductions by this tariff implementation: Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, and South Africa.
Yo.
It's very telling as to 4 countries. In Algeria's case, 30% became 30%, right? Mm-hmm. Libya, 31 to 30, fine. Tunisia, actually even Tunisia got a reduction, 28 down to 25. South Africa, 30 stayed at 30. Now my question then becomes at this point, how did we not do enough to get this thing over the line? Because president then...
Because this is not about negotiations and engagements. This is about Trump just not liking us. And we've said this, we've had this before. Why doesn't he like us? Well, can we list the reasons? We're killing white farmers. No, we're not. BEE, stop trampling on our own sovereignty. I mean, you might not like BEE, but you don't want a third party to come and tell you about it. Iran, Israel, etc., etc. It's he doesn't like South Africa, and I think it's thanks to 2 things. It's thanks to Elon Musk, who probably whispered something in his ear around the genocide, and the G20. If it wasn't for those 2, he wouldn't know where. He wouldn't care. Remember when he talked about Namibia? Like he would have just called us, South whatever
something.
Unfortunately, my grandfather always said to me, "What was the don't put your head above the pulpit. Like keep your head down." We put our head up.
We did. I suppose we did.
Trump is shooting at it.
So I bring this up because right now, as of 10 o'clock this morning, a couple of minutes ago, there's a joint ministerial press briefing between DIRCO and the DTIC currently taking place. Now, we'll obviously find out the details of that when we stop our live stream and when we can kind of dig into that, because we don't want to disturb our own stream, right? And also, it's unlikely that what's going to be discussed there...
quick flash coming across is working on measures to mitigate potential job losses, working to block exemptions, on block exemption. In other words, we are working, but and we with new high growth markets in Asia and Middle East, including. The short answer is he's just not taking our calls. He's blue ticking us. So
here's the thing, right? On that, the president said something quite interesting this morning in his presidential briefing and letter that goes out. I think it's the weekly newsletter from the president's desk, right? And it was saying that. I'm trying to find the exact wording here. It's here. I've got it in front of me, but I'm trying to find the exact wording. And this for me was something that I had a lot of questions around as to, what's happening. to enhance trade, our foremost no. It was something about we remain open to engagements, right?
South Africa will continue to use diplomatic channels to negotiate a mutually beneficial trade deal with the United States.
No, it wasn't that. It was further down in that same statement, and it basically gave a very, I want to say it left the taste that we are sitting here waiting for the United States to talk to us. So yes, they've blue-ticked us. But if somebody's blue-ticked you and they've already taken a decision, you should be knocking on their door harder, right? If this really matters to us as much as our government says it does,
but we
to
can't
sit back quietly and do nothing and say, oh, but we're waiting for them to let us talk
We
to
don't
them.
have a diplomat in America right now. Because Ramaphosa is, I assume...
Because we appointed a gentleman that wasn't going to be accepted by the United States in the first place.
Correct. And I suppose the president is applying his mind?
He's been applying his mind for an awfully long time.
He's slow like that.
Okay. In the meantime...
I have no other answer.
In the meantime, South African businesses lose millions in contracts. I saw one of the South African businesses saying overnight, effective 1 August on Friday, a company lost around 750 million in contracts that they'd had in place because of the new tariff adjustments. Now, bigger businesses might be able to suffer these sorts of losses in order books and in pipeline, but smaller and medium-sized businesses can ill afford this, especially because some of the order book agreements are what I'm basing my financing on. And now I've got financing commitments I need to adhere to, that now suddenly setting up an emergency export desk is not going to solve the problem. I feel like there needs to be a little more urgency towards this matter.
Yeah, and it's not just, I mean, the impact results are out this morning. And one of their businesses that's been doing really well is selling the containers that the citrus goes in so it can be exported. Now, Impact can probably take it. They've got an underlying operating profit of over 300 million, EBITDA of over 600 million. They can kind of afford it, but it's still going to hurt a business which, when you're operating in the South African market and if you're making money like you are, like Rockstar, and this just makes it harder.
It really does. And as we wrap up the conversation, because we are unfortunately out of time for the live stream, I want to take a look at the markets and how the markets have been responding. From a Rand perspective, we're back below 17. We're back below 18 Rand, right? So we're at 17.99 after having kind of tapped 18.40 last week. So clearly the Rand is responding positively to how markets have come in, or the 30% that was priced in has now kind of been fully priced into the market, to the extent that the market is saying, well, we now know what the worst case scenario is in South Africa's case, right? That being said, the top 40 bounced off of 90,000 points. We're still at about 9,800. But for context, at highs, we were at 93,000 points, and we've just come off those highs because of obviously the tariff implementations. The local markets seemingly are shrugging off as much of this as they can.
1.5%, a little less than 2% off the highs.
Yeah, but from a business perspective, I think when we start to see and feel the impact and the ripple effects on businesses being unable to export, businesses losing profitabilities and revenues and going through the pain, then suddenly and at that point it'll be way too late to say, let's correct the situation. So I can appreciate that we've set up the export support desk or whatever it is that we're calling it, but I want to dig into this briefing, and we'll do that as we wrap up the live now. I want to dig into the briefing and find out really what our government is doing to mitigate this, because some might say they're not doing enough.
I would argue that. Look, I appreciate it's not easy, but we got tariffs. You haven't done enough. Next question, surely.
So Incognito's jumped onto our chat and says that rumor has it that we are taking notes from Swaziland and planning to house US jailbirds just to score some diplomatic brownie points. See, Incognito, that is, there's so many concerns around that, but
I don't know. I mean, has anyone ever escaped out of CMAX?
Ananias Mate, rumored to have done it with Vaseline. Yeah, no, that's just one example. We are not the case study for being able to do that. But what we might be the case study for, as you bring up CMAX, is Something that we potentially would dive into at another time. Shout out to TikTok community. Maybe you guys can weigh in on this. I'm going to leave it as our punchline for Market Matters as we wrap up the Market Matters segment. Should we repurpose? And I saw this somewhere online. I unfortunately cannot credit the creator of this because I refreshed my feed. And, that's what TikTok does, right? So don't refresh your feed, apparently. Should we repurpose Robben Island into an Ibiza and a party island because we're not using it? And does that affect our heritage as a country?
Yes and yes.
There we go. Size spoken. That's Market Matters. We're going to leave it on that note. We're going to get into the deep dive and investor insights. As we said, we're going to be diving into funding Formula One. It's going to be a very interesting deep dive. Stick around for that, dropping later in the week. But for now, that's Market Matters, folks.